of Education, and we will start with listed questions. I call Tom Elliott.
Question number 1, Deputy Speaker.
Call the Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The plans for a new build for Enniskillen Royal Grammar School on the former Portora Royal Grammar School site are well advanced, with final technical design, pre-tender construction estimates and decant plans for the former Devonish College currently being prepared by the appointed integrated consultant team. A planning application for the new build was submitted in March of 2023. However, no decision on the application has been taken at this time. Any decision to progress this project beyond the current design stage will be dependent on available capital funding.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank the Minister for that update. Just wondering if there's any finance ring-fenced in this current year's budget to help progress the school.
Well, Deputy Speaker, there isn't ring-fenced funding for any particular school in that respect. I was able to announce 15 projects that could advance to construction in the current financial year, but this school is still not at that stage where it is ready to go into the construction phase. So it is important that it can get to that point, and then, of course, where finance can become available, it will allow me to move more schools into that construction stage process, and that's why I appeal to members support me as I make the case to my executive colleagues for capital funding, and that will allow me to take forward not just this project but many of the other projects that I would like to see developed within the school estate.
Anya Murphy.
Can Collier, and I'd like to welcome the Minister's recent announcement in relation to a much-needed extension for St Kevin's College Listonskee. Could the Minister give an approximate timescale on when we will see work commence?
Minister.
Deputy Speaker, if it's on Listonskee, I'll come back to the member in writing in respect of that one. Obviously, I'm prepared to do with the Enniskillen Grammar School as part of the original question.
Calls Deborah Erskine.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answers so far. The Minister will be acutely aware that I too want to see Enniskillen Royal Grammar School progress, and can he indicate what the timescales may be once the school goes after planning, because decanting to a Devonish site is not the ideal either, given that the Devonish College moved out into a new site and there are issues with that site in particular as well.
Deputy Speaker, obviously there are still issues to progress until Enniskillen Royal can get to that construction stage, so it is not there to be bidding for capital because it hasn't got to that shovel-ready state. So obviously we need to get the processes concluded. Planning permission is still working through the system. Once that is all completed, then this school can sit along with other schools in making the application for that. And where capital becomes available, then I will be able to announce more new builds. But at this stage, the announcements are for this year, but we need to get other schools to the point at which they can be commencing, subject to the availability of capital.
Call Sinead McLaughlin.
Speaker, Minister, as students in Bunschool, Colmkill and Derry have been waiting now over 20 years for a new school. Can the Minister make any comment today on when they can expect a new build?
Minister.
Speaker, again, the question relates to Enniskillen, so I understand members want to draw in every other school, but I can provide a written update to the member. What I would say, Deputy Speaker, when it comes to decisions around financing and capital, please make the case when it comes around the executive table, when it comes to voting through the budget, to increase the allocations for the Department of Education, and then I'll be able to take forward more projects. But in respect to the particular question, I'll provide a written update to the member.
I'll call Keith Buchanan.
Thank you, Speaker. Question 2, please.
Minister.
International studies such as the Programme for International Student Assessment PISA provide essential insights on our system's strengths and highlight opportunities to learn from approaches used in other high-performing countries. The 2022 study, published in December of 23, showed that Northern Ireland pupils continued to significantly outperform the majority of education systems in each subject, as they did in the last study in 2018. In this most recent study, our pupils significantly outperformed 48 education systems in mathematics, 57 in reading and 49 in science. The PISA 2022 study was especially important in providing the first results for a comparative international study of academic assessment collected during the pandemic for this cohort of pupils at 15 years old. I place on record my thanks to the 80 participating schools for making this possible in what were very challenging circumstances. And whilst the score for science in Northern Ireland had not changed significantly since 2018, the scores for both mathematics and reading had declined significantly. It is notable, but not unsurprising, given the impact of the pandemic, that this was also the case on average across OECD countries. While these results show our post-primary system to be a strong performer on the international stage, they also demonstrate that we have more to do.
Keith Buchanan.
Thank the Minister so far for his answer. Minister, how did Northern Ireland results compare with other local jurisdictions and participating countries?
Minister.
Well, Deputy Speaker, in comparison to other jurisdictions within the United Kingdom, results in Northern Ireland were significantly above that of Wales, not so different to that of Scotland. However, Northern Ireland fell significantly below the average scores in England. Scores in England did drop across all subjects since 2018. However, the differential was less so than for other UK regions. An OECD analysis of the PISA 22 results across the 81 participating countries found that in spite of challenging circumstances, 31 countries and economies managed to at least maintain their performance in mathematics since PISA 2018. And among these, 5 countries maintained or further raised already high levels of student performance, and these systems showed common features. And this was in Australia, Japan, Korea, Singapore and Switzerland. These features included shorter school closures, fewer obstacles to remote learning, and continuing teachers and parental support, which can further offer insights and indications of broader best practices to address in the future. So, Deputy Speaker, we have performed well, but my ambition for the next 10 years is that Northern Ireland is the best performing country within the United Kingdom, and that's the change that I want to see in terms of how we deliver our curriculum, and 10 years from now we should be the best performing country within the UK. That's my ambition, and I trust it's the ambition of all members of this House.
Call Danny Baker.
How does the Minister plan to address the significant gap in the average scores between the most disadvantaged and the least disadvantaged pupils?
Minister.
Speaker, we just announced recently the RAISE programme, which is around reducing educational disadvantage. That builds upon Fair Start, where we are identifying how we can support through a whole community approach. And there are some really good examples. I was at one this morning in East Belfast, and I was there with Givan Robinson, and we were looking at how they are working in partnership with schools, with all of the community organisations, and how they can take that forward. We spoke about this in an adjournment debate recently in terms of the West Belfast Partnership and the work that it is taking place. So the RAISE programme, which we are now moving forward with, will give us a real opportunity to bring forward even further improvements in areas where there is social disadvantage and educational underperformance.
Call Matthew O'Toole.
Speaker, Minister, it is definitely right to say that there are high levels of educational achievement in Northern Ireland in specific areas, and we should be proud of that, and no one should doubt that. But it is also the case that at a society-wide level, there are real problems in terms of very high levels of people relative to other jurisdictions who leave here without any qualifications, and the impact that has on our economy overall. What specific actions do you want to take in your stint in office to address that long tail of educational underachievement?
Minister.
Well, building on what I referred to the member, Mr Baker from West Belfast, Mr O'Toole is right in terms of wanting to make sure that we are equipping our children and young people with the best possible opportunity in terms of career progression, our economy. That's why we have a framework approach between the Department of Education and Economy for 14 to 19. How do we make sure they get the right skills so that they're able to get on and progress economically? So there is work that we're taking forward. The RAISE programme, early intervention, all of this is vitally important so that we equip our young people with the best possible opportunities.
I call Sean Holland.
Question 3, please, Minister.
Minister.
Deputy Speaker, I circulated the first report on the operation of the Children's Services Cooperation Act 2015 to my executive colleagues on the 17th of June, asking that they provide their views by the 21st of June, and it's my intention to seek formal executive agreement to publish that report at the earliest opportunity.
Shamil Holland.
Thank you. Does the Minister agree with the assessment by the Northern Ireland Commissioner for Children, Young People and the Children's Law Centre that while the CASCA framework exists and guidelines exist, it is underutilised without established regulations from the Department of Finance? And can the Minister give his assessment about what work can be done to improve the utilisation of the CASCA legislation?
Minister.
Well, when we publish the report, I certainly will welcome the feedback in terms of the findings of it, and there are some examples of good practice where the departments are collaborating together, and I also believe there are examples where we should be doing things better, but focusing on the things that we have been able to do, because legislation should not be required for departments to work collaboratively together. We should be doing it, and we do. And I can give you some examples. The early learning childcare strategy that the executive agreed, nearly all departments sit on that, and the executive approved £25 million towards that. We're looking at the RAISE programme, which again we secured funding from, and that will involve various different departments that will sit within those teams. I look at the Thrive scheme that's taking place with voluntary community and different local government agencies. So we do work together in collaboration. Legislation should not be needed for departments to do that, and I think I've given examples of where we didn't need legislation to work together, but it can also be a useful tool to underpin some of the services that the public expect us to provide.
Call Cathy Mason.
Can I ask the Minister what collaboration there has been between health and education with regard to the provision of wraparound services for support with children with special educational needs?
Minister.
So there are examples where I'm aware now that health trusts are withdrawing some of their staff in special schools, and that does cause me concern because within those schools I think you have children and young people there. It makes sense for health professionals to come into those facilities, and whilst there is again high-level collaboration, we are seeing an outworking which doesn't reflect the aspirations at a departmental, senior team and ministerial level. So that does cause me concern. It's something that we need to see engagement on, but there are examples of good practice in that area, but I think there's so much more that we can be doing and working between the Department of Education and the Department of Health to try and meet the needs, both educationally and also the increasing medical complexities that many children now have within our school settings.
Call Daniel McCrossan.
Thank you, Speaker. Minister, as Chair of the Public Accounts Committee, countless witnesses and people that have come to the committee have criticised the Executive for a lack of cooperation. Are you confident that your department has adhered to the Children's Cooperation Act fully?
Minister.
Yeah, there's no example of where we haven't in that respect that I'm aware of, but we will publish it, and I would welcome the feedback from the PAC, which carries out important work at looking across the Executive to identify where things can be improved. But I repeat the earlier points. We shouldn't require legislation to force departments to work together. And I think this Executive has been showing where we can work together, we are able to do that and to do that successfully. But can things be improved? Yes, they can. I met just this morning with Caleb's mother, Anna White. We talked about how the campaign to do with Caleb. I know Conor Murphy, the Minister for Economy, spoke about this yesterday, and that is an area where both I, the Minister for the Economy, the Minister for Health, need to be working in collaboration as to how do we meet the needs for post-19 provision, and it sits across different departments, and we shouldn't need legislation to make us work together. And so as I gave the commitment in that meeting that I would work collaboratively with other ministerial colleagues, I will do that, because we need to make sure that we act together. Legislation should not be required to force ministers to do that, and I'm glad that in this Executive we are able to get on with the job and try to do our best for people.
I call Owen Tennyson.
Deputy Speaker.
Minister.
The end-to-end review of special educational needs was initiated in February 2023 and is being taken forward in 4 phases. Phase 1 is complete and involved the establishment of governance structures, the scoping of the review and associated 12 work streams. Phase 2 involves stakeholder engagement to shape the way forward. Phase 3 is the development of options, and Phase 4 is the development of an implementation plan. Phase 2 of the review is nearing completion and has been focusing on the development of potential solutions to solving the known issues. The findings from stakeholder engagement are being considered as part of a more detailed implementation plan, and in coming months I intend to set out some early Year 1 actions with the view to rebuilding confidence and capability across the system. These early actions will be embedded within a clear plan for implementation of system-wide reform and form part of the wider departmental bid to the newly established Northern Ireland Executive Interim Public Sector Transformation Board. The plan will focus on a framework that will ensure children and young people with SEN and/or a disability get the right support from the right people at the right time and in the right place. It's important that I emphasise the need for sustained investment to deliver the fundamental reforms which are emerging from the end-to-end review of SEN and to deliver a high-quality, efficient, effective and sustainable SEN system for the future.
Owen Tennyson for supplementary.
I thank the Minister for that answer. The Minister will be aware that there have been numerous reports into SEN provision in Northern Ireland over the past decade. What assurance can he give that the recommendations arising from the end-to-end review won't simply sit on the shelf like others, but will be implemented? And when can we expect to see that implementation plan before this Assembly?
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I've indicated that I do intend to set out a number of early Year 1 actions in the coming months, and I appreciate the sentiment the member has articulated in terms of wanting to see real and tangible action in this area. We have reviews, we have the evidence that change needs to happen, and I'll be setting out how we can take forward those changes and what we can do within a short time frame. And also look to the longer-term systemic change that is needed. And these include actions under the areas around early intervention, pupil support, professional support in the classroom and communication. And it's envisaged that in the first term of the new academic year, the Department will have a suite of alternative approaches for the deployment of classroom assistance, which will be available for schools if they wish. So that's just a sample of some of the things that I intend to outline in due course in terms of those short-term measures to help allay some of the concerns the member has raised.
Call Linda Dillon.
Thank you, and thank the Minister for his answers so far. Minister, we had allied health professionals in front of us at the Health Committee last week, and they raised some concerns about whether there are conversations happening around the provision for children with special educational needs. So whilst you're having an end-to-end review, and I do appreciate that, and I think that the work that's been done by your department is really positive, can you give us an update on what conversations are happening with the Health Department, and is there an assurance being given that they will actually put the investment into those allied health professionals to ensure the support is there for children, because parents are really nervous about what's happening at the moment?
Deputy Speaker, I agree with the member and understand that nervousness, because I've heard it firsthand from parents whenever I meet with them. And this comes to the issue of how we provide that overall support, not just educationally, but whenever it comes to the health needs. And so the requirement to have speech and language therapists available is one example where children need support. Then you have behavioural issues, and we need to have support. And I'm not satisfied at the current provision that exists in terms of that Department of Education and Department of Health working in collaboration together. So we do need to address that issue. There are local integrated teams that are meant to be there to help work through these issues with children that have special educational needs, but I do believe it has to improve. I understand the challenges that the Department of Health is facing, but it is a retrograde step to be withdrawing health professionals from educational establishments.
I call Cheryl Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for his answer so far. This is obviously a critical challenge for his department, and I welcome this response. But in terms of the stakeholder engagement, could the Minister detail if he has been working with the voluntary and community sector, as he'll know they are critical to providing support and assistance for parents and children with special educational needs, and is there any methods of best practice that he's integrated within the review?
Minister.
Well, the member outlines the importance of the voluntary and community sector, and I know that in my own constituency about the important role that they can play. And therefore it's important that we can harness the support that they can provide. That's something that often schools can do independently in terms of linking in with the community and gaining that support. I want to be there to help and facilitate all of that, and where there's best practice, that's something that I want to be able to take and share across the education system.
Yeah, Nicole.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Minister. The voluntary and community sector have fed back to me that they still feel like the situation is similar to last year, and it strikes me that there is a lack of confidence in them, but particularly from parents in ensuring that their children are going to be placed. There's an inequality that children in mainstream schools are placed in April and those with SEN are not.
Question.
What reassurance can you give that not only will the department prioritise placing these children, but placing them in a place that is suitable and appropriate for their needs?
Sure.
Speaker, I recently announced a bespoke capital programme when it comes to schools and special educational needs. So not only am I addressing the short-term challenge in terms of school placements this term for September, and we are working through that process, and whilst it's of no comfort to those children and families that still need a place, we are in a better position than last year, but last year was an appalling place, but we are in a better place now compared to then. But I announced a capital programme, a 10-year plan. I announced that we would assess all 39 special schools, and where they need to have enhancement, then they should be prioritised for those enhancement programmes. We announced new builds in Givan, Ardnashee, and we've recognised there needs to be 8 new special schools, 4 in Belfast and 4 in other parts of Northern Ireland. So this is a minister and an executive who recognises the challenge, is looking to the longer term in terms of having a strategic approach, but also dealing with the real challenge today for those children and families that need placed in September.
I now call Padraig Delargy.
Deputy Speaker, the recently announced RAISE programme provides a significant opportunity to improve education outcomes for children and young people. It will adopt a whole community approach to supporting those at risk of exclusion, marginalisation and underachievement. This investment will provide funding to some of the most disadvantaged areas in Northern Ireland to ensure that children and young people are happy, learning and succeeding. The programme will also enable the creation of strong collaborative partnerships across schools, community organisations and government departments working across these eligible areas, supporting area-based partnership approaches over the next 2 years and potentially extending further subject to evaluation. Of course, I'm happy to consider other funding opportunities as and when they arise. The Shared Island investment to raise achievement and reduce educational disadvantage is of course very welcome and will enable a significant programme of work. I'm also keen to pursue opportunities for shared working and shared learning from an East-West perspective.
Padraig Delargy for a supplementary.
Well, Minister, thank you for your answer. We know the fantastic work that schools right across the north do, but it's very clear that there is a gap, a significant gap actually, in educational attainment between the north and the south. What do you identify as the key reasons for that, and how are you going to ensure that that gap is reduced?
Minister.
Well, Deputy Speaker, obviously each jurisdiction will measure outcomes in the way in which that they do. I've highlighted how even in the most recent PISA findings, Northern Ireland is performing within the United Kingdom at a higher level compared to Wales. Some are similar to Scotland, but the trajectory for Scotland is in decline, and they are looking at how they can review their curriculum. I want to make sure that our curriculum is being based upon a specific approach that makes sure Northern Ireland can proceed. So it isn't a case of comparing necessarily Northern Ireland with the Republic of Ireland. Where we can learn from each other as to what the best practice is, that's something that we should do. Where we can learn East-West, again, that's something that we should do, and I'm keen to take the best practice from wherever it exists, either within the United Kingdom or within the Republic of Ireland, or indeed from international best practice. And I met recently at the World Education Forum in London the Education Minister for New Zealand, and we were able to engage and talk about how New Zealand, having had performance levels declining, what they are now doing to change that and the approach that they are taking. So wherever best practice exists, we should learn from it.
I call Alan Chambers.
Question 6, Deputy Speaker.
Minister.
Ensuring that all children with special educational needs have a school placement that is appropriate to meet their needs is and will continue to be a primary focus for my department and the Education Authority. Around 60% of children with SEN do not require a statement of special educational needs, and these children apply for a school place through the general schools admission process. 40% of children with SEN have a statement of SEN, and these children follow a different process whereby their school placement is named on their statement based on their individually assessed needs and in consultation with parents and schools. And whilst parental preference is considered, responsibility for the naming of a place rests with the Education Authority. There has been a significant increase in the number of children requiring a specialist education place in recent years, and the struggle to keep pace with demand is well rehearsed. Almost 4,500 children with a statement of SEN require a new or change of placement for September 2024 this year. In February of this year, the Education Authority advised that around 1,000 additional special educational places were required to meet this demand, and significant progress has been made through the creation of additional capacity, and the requirement now stands at around 400 places that need to be established. Significant progress has also been made to secure appropriate placements for all children with special educational needs for September of this year. As of the 24th of June, 83% of children with the statement of SEN have a confirmed place, and this figure is expected to rise significantly by the end of June. However, the situation for September does remain challenging. Particular pressures for special school places and focused work continues to secure additional specialist education places across the entire school estate.
Alan Chambers for supplementary.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for your reply. I'm sure that the Minister would agree that the placement of mainstream transfer pupils can be a stressful exercise, but for special educational needs pupils and their families, it is even more stressful. Hopefully, with the help of this House, he can find resolutions to resolve this situation that he has acknowledged is challenging.
Minister.
Well, can I thank the member for those comments? He recognises the efforts that are being made to try and meet the need. That is work that continues because we have to make sure that by September every child does have a place for them, and my department is supporting the Education Authority to do that, and we have taken steps including seeking schools to identify their willingness to provide spaces. We're mapping all of that out. We have surveyed a lot of the schools as to what the need would be to provide any change or to put in specialist provision. And all of that is work that has been taken forward by my department working with EA, and that work will continue because I am determined that by September every child does have a place. I met with the Chief Executive of EA and the target, he said to me, was to make sure every child does have a place by September. But I don't want to be here, Mr Deputy Speaker, next year in the same position because the anxiety and the stress that's placed upon families who still don't know where their child is going to be placed is unacceptable. It's unacceptable for them, it's unacceptable to me, and we need to make sure that when we get through this year that we're not faced with the same scenario next year.
Well, Stephen Dunn.
Deputy Speaker, can the Minister join me in commending the 5 schools within my own constituency of North Down that have come forward to express an interest in establishing both new or additional specialist provision classes? Can he outline what impact these will have on SEN pressures locally?
Minister.
And I'll join happily with the member to thank in his constituency those schools that did respond positively, and to all schools who expressed a willingness to provide additional capacity for this year and indeed for future years. It was a very positive response. We had 400 schools indicated a willingness to establish specialist provision classes in response to the survey that my department had issued. Officials engaged with those schools who said that they could establish provision this year, and we're following up with the remainder in the new school term to ensure that provision can be put in place in line with projected need. 6 schools have agreed to establish new specialist provision this year in the Ards and North Down Council area, and that will create 7 additional classes for up to 60 children with social communication needs and learning difficulties who otherwise may not have had access to a suitable school place for September 2024. So I thank those schools for taking the proactive approach that they have taken.
Okay, members, that ends the period for listed questions. We will now move on to 15 minutes of topical questions. Please note that questions 1, 5 and 9 have been withdrawn, and I call Orlia Flynn.
I thank the Minister for his answers so far. My question is around if the Minister has any update in terms of the consultation process that's been carried out in West Belfast at the site of the old Suffolk School, primary school. So there's been a consultation around providing additional SEN places. If there's any update on that, thanks.
Sure.
I'm aware of the issue that the member raises in terms of, again, trying to have additional capacity. I'm happy to provide a written update. I don't have the exact details as to where the position currently sits, but I'm more than happy to engage with the member and also to provide more information.
Orlia Flynn for supplementary.
No, I thank the Minister for that response, and maybe just as a follow-on, if the consultation is successful and the hope is that we will get some additional provision for this school that's obviously based in West Belfast but will take in kids from right across the areas, have you any sense of even the numbers of, you know, how many we're talking, how much additional places this particular piece of land might provide for you?
Minister.
I don't have the precise details, but what I will say to the member, where consultation process is carried out and where we are able to provide support and it comes to me for a decision, I'll not be found wanting and trying to expedite that as soon as possible, because we recognise that there is a need to provide additional capacity right across Northern Ireland, but there are some areas where there's higher need than others. And where I can support meeting that need, I'll not be found wanting in providing the support that's necessary to do that. But I'll happily provide more details to the member with a more precise update.
Call Emma Sheeran.
Minister, I've recently written to you about the case for Holy Primary School in Marfelt, and the principal has been in contact with me. The school have been requesting a new build at the site for quite a number of years. I wonder if you'd give consideration to that.
Minister.
Always happy to give consideration to new bills. The member has more leverage than I suspect with the Finance Minister to help me to get the funding to do that. But where I can provide support, absolutely I'll provide support, but happy to engage with the member, as I am with, I think, nearly every member corresponds with me about new schools and enhancing their provisions. I always want to do more, and with the right support I'll be able to.
Ms. Sheeran for supplementary.
Thanks, Minister, for that commitment. So some of the classrooms in Holy Family Primary have been in operation since 1890, and there are generations of families who have been using the same classroom, where grandparents were in the exact same building as their grandchildren now are. So in the interim period, could we see some sort of I suppose provision that if it's not a new build straight away, some sort of help to the dilapidated building that is there?
Minister.
If there's any need to make sure a building is safe, of course the Education Authority will provide that support to do that. The member will know the normal process for new builds, school enhancement programmes. There would be a call put out by the department, then the managing authorities will put forward different schools, and CCMS would put forward a list of schools within that sector, and then there is a criteria that is applied based upon need. So I recognise there is a need to invest in the school estate. I was pleased to secure an additional £80 million this year. That has allowed me to announce 15 new projects, 8 new schools, 7 school enhancement programmes. But could I do more? Yes, I could. If more funding becomes available, then I'll seek to take forward more schemes. I want to provide the support that's needed, and with the support of this House and executive colleagues, I'll be able to do more.
Conor Egan.
Speaker, thank you, Minister. Special schools, as you know, are a lifeline for many children, and summer schemes are a vital part of this. Could you please give us an update on the funding for summer schemes in special schools for this summer?
Minister.
Can I thank the member for raising the question, because I am aware of the need to provide clarity, and I am pleased to be able to give that announcement today that I will be supporting the enhanced summer provision programme for special schools this year. I understand the importance of this provision for children and young people and their families, and I want to thank our school leaders and their staff for their commitment to the delivery of these activities across the summer period, and I've asked officials to continue working with colleagues across departments, local government and the voluntary and community sector to ensure that summer provisions and out-of-school hours activities are accessible to every child with special educational needs and disability.
Connie Egan for supplementary.
Minister, some schools are already communicating with parents that these schemes won't be able to go ahead. Can you confirm that you will be in contact with schools as soon as possible to confirm this funding and this provision will continue over the summer?
I can confirm that official confirmation will take place, but I've announced today that that is the case. Members will be aware of the very significant financial challenges facing the Department of Education. We are on a projected overspend of £200 million this year. There will be very difficult decisions that need to be taken, but I'm determined that children with special educational needs should not be the ones bearing the brunt of the difficult decisions that need to be taken. This scheme is in the region of £655,000, and I've given approval for that expenditure to be incurred this morning.
Question 5 is pointed out as withdrawn, so we move to Cheryl Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for his answers so far. I know you've touched on it there slightly, but could you give us a further update on the budgetary pressures that your department is facing?
Sorry, Deputy Speaker. The Department's resource allocation for 24-25 is significantly less than what is required and leaves a considerable shortfall across the education sector. Education will require substantially more funding during this budget period if we are to avoid a significant and detrimental impact on our children and young people. My department has submitted resource bids totalling £293 million and capital bids totalling £113 million within the June monitoring round. These pressures include, amongst other things, additional funding for our schools, including a much-needed schools maintenance programme, investment in our children and special educational needs, the EA pay and grading review, and a teachers' pay award for September 2024. The inability to fund these pressures in turn could potentially lead to re-intensified industrial action and a return to action short of strike in the autumn, which has been crippling to our education system. However, given the quantum of the sector's need and the funds available for allocation, I anticipate that any additional allocations received in the June monitoring will not meet all my department's inescapable pressures, and many difficult decisions will need to be taken over coming months. I am working through with my officials what options are available and what difficult decisions can be taken, some of which will be cross-cutting, and to that end it will be important that my executive colleagues understand the pressures that education faces.
Cheryl Brownlee for supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for his very honest response. In terms of the school enhancement programme, I understand that within my constituency there's a number of schools waiting for that to be announced or moved forward. Do you have any more information on where this sits currently and the pressures in terms of budgets for this?
The enhanced summer scheme provisions I have approved, despite all of the financial pressures that my department faces. That funding will be made available and they will be able to go ahead. And I know for many families this is important to them. I also want to take forward those capital programmes. I visited the member's constituency. We've looked at some of the schools within her constituency. And that capital programme we are taking forward. Where I can secure additional funding in the June monitoring round, then I'll be able to update the member and the House of where I'm able to allocate that funding to in due course.
I call Diane Dodds.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Minister, many of us are concerned that the control sector is disadvantaged in that it does not have a specific body to look after its needs. The independent review of education recommended that at the very least there should be a function within EA to do this in a separate directorate. Can you give us an update on where this now sits?
Minister.
Well, the member has articulated well the issues, and I agree entirely with the member, and therefore recognising the concerns that were highlighted by the independent review panel, and I'm committed to ensuring that the controlled sector is given the level of support it requires. I have asked officials working with the Education Authority and the Controlled Schools Support Council to undertake some initial analysis to help me determine how best to proceed. I expect to receive that advice shortly, following which I will bring forward proposals outlining how I plan to address the findings of the independent review, and I can assure the member that while this is a priority area for me, it's important that we take time to ensure that the solutions that we put in place are effective and capable of delivering real change.
Ann Dodds for a supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Minister, do you believe that it will require legislation to create a separate body for the controlled sector, and that this is potentially in the long run the only way forward to ensure that there is equity between all of the sectors in education?
Sure.
Well, Deputy Speaker, one of the first steps that can be created is for a specific directorate to be created within the Education Authority, because it is the managing authority for controlled schools. It's a particular function that the EA has. It is not the managing authority for all schools. Members will know that CCMS is the managing authority for the Catholic maintained sector, and then we have other sectors that are there for the various needs within the education system, but the controlled schools sit within EA as the managing authority. So that is a change that I want to see, but then I do want to have a managing authority for the controlled schools. Members will know from their experience, certainly I do within my constituency, of the frustration within many controlled schools at the lack of support that they feel exists when it comes to dealing with issues. And therefore it's not acceptable for me that the controlled sector do not get the support that is required, and I'm determined that change will happen in this area.
I call Stuart Dixon.
Speaker. Minister, you recently announced a consultation on school uniform policy, but could you tell the House how you propose to include children and young people in that consultation and how their voices will be heard?
Minister.
So the member will know that in that announcement there is provision online for people to engage in that, but recognising there has to be more detailed engagement with children and young people. The Education Authority will be taking forward stakeholder engagement events to ensure that the voices of children and young people are heard as part of that process.
Stuart Dixon for supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for your answers so far. Minister, you set out school uniform as one of your day one priorities, but given it was a day one priority, why is this review being launched in June at the end of the school year?
Sure.
Well, Deputy Speaker, it has been taken forward and taken forward at pace. So having instructed officials for this consultation to be carried out, the work was undertaken to pull all of that information together. It is out now for consultation. I want to have proposals brought to me by the 30th of October. That will allow me to look at the current guidance, and it will also allow me to take forward the engagement that I need with executive colleagues in terms of the shape of the legislation. So it's important because I've said that this is a priority for me, but more importantly, for parents, this is the #1 issue that comes through in every parent stakeholder engagement when it comes to the financial costs associated with school uniforms. And at a time whenever the cost of living pressures are really squeezing people's incomes, we need to make sure that we're doing everything possible to support those families. The overwhelming majority of schools do follow the guidance which exists, but I have given my support to putting that guidance on a statutory footing, making sure that it is relevant and up to date, and we are also seeking views on what a cap cost would look like, and that is an opportunity for the public to engage as part of that process.
I call Harry Harvey and point out 1 minute to go.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Could the Minister provide an update in relation to industrial action by support staff? Thank you.
Minister.
Well, Deputy Speaker, I was delighted that we had significant progress in terms of the negotiations that were taking place. I met with the trade unions very early in taking up office. I indicated my willingness to engage in partnership because the same issues affecting the trade unions affect me and concern me, and therefore we've had a constructive relationship and we engaged in good faith. They called off their further planned industrial action, and subsequently a package is now being consulted upon within the trade union membership, and I hope that that will be successful. So subject to that positive response, stage one of the process will see investment of £52 million this year. That will move everyone onto their new pay scales, taking effect from the 1st of April. And I've been working with the Finance Minister, and we'll be seeking executive approval to meet this investment from the June monitoring round. The second stage of the process is a non-consolidated payment to those staff in post from the 1st of April 2024. It will be paid in April 2024, or sorry, it goes back to April 2022, and that will be in the region of £80 million, and that will lead to a £2,550 payment, and I think that is welcomed by all members because these staff are incredibly important to the education system. There are classroom assistants, our catering staff, our bus drivers, and I trust that the outworking of the ballot will be successful, and then we can implement this new arrangement.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes our questions to the Minister of Education. We now move on to questions to the Assembly Commission. Members are asked to note questions 3 and 8 have been withdrawn, and I call William Irwin.